All right, people, welcome to the Wooden House Show. So right now, as you can see, I have like the lines right there, little guidelines. And when I'm doing the wood in here, I go ahead and have like a nice bright brush, kind of even. Then these are my guidelines, like where the wood planks are going to be going. And with this, instead of doing like small strokes, you actually want to do longer strokes all the way across your entire house. A little wobbly there. Couple that. My 4 cups of coffee brush stroke. It's better with just 2. And I'll do 1 clean line for the edge of the house, just like that. But I'm not going to keep that though. Like this line here, I got to get rid of all those strokes. So here will come this direction. My guidelines on this one are going to be a little less. And coming across here. I'll go all the way across that first stroke. Just like that. All right, then I'll let it curve over. Once again, small strokes, all the way across though. And then you can change color a little bit. Maybe I'll add a little more brown to it, for instance. Not a big difference, but you want some variation. Following the guidelines again. This is all for the base coat. Get that to shrink around. Bam, so we're starting to get those streaks going. And before it's dry, I'm going to take the sponge and sort of create the illusion of grain just by dragging this across. When I do that, it creates the illusion of wood grain, more or less. And I'll come all the way across with this one. Little streaks in there, and you can start with a darker color first if you wanted to. Like I have the dark blue, so as I drag some of the paint off, it has the look of exposing like that wood grain. Before this dries, I'm going to go back into this. Same brush strokes. All the way across. Dip in. I'm starting to like the color. It's starting to grow on me a little bit. All right, so I'll go kind of fast here, get rid of that shrub. You don't want to do too much at once, otherwise if the paint dries, you won't be able to get that texture with the sponge. And that'll just cause you to do another layer. All right, now I'm going to drag this again. Too much. I'll repaint that. And then now the lines are starting to go up the other direction. All right, so it's a little bit thin here, so I'm going to go back over that with some more paint. All right. Drag that across. And here I can clean it up now with a little bit of a sponge, or I can just wait till it dries and go back over that molding. Yeah, it's a much better color. I like better than the gray. Looks like a little cottage. I'll do like 2 or 3 strokes here. Then before it dries, go back. And the sponge, by the way, is sponge is not wet at all. Otherwise, it'll just take off all the paint. So you want it kind of a dry sponge. Drag that across. All right, so I'm getting all the streaks in there. And this is like layer number 1. Well, technically layer number 2, because we did the base coat first, darker. And then if you wanted to do a light base coat, you could, and then go over that with like the wood grain, like this technique. You could do that with a darker color. All right, I have like a little bottom that's brick. We'll get that started, because I have to wait for this to dry a little bit anyways, before the next layer. So now I'll go ahead and get the red, get my bricks going. Base coat on them anyways. Little red action. Bricks aren't like really red though, so I'm gonna add some brown into it. Maybe burnt sienna. maybe even a little yellow ochre. All right, so this, gotta get my ruler again, figure out where that line's supposed to go. Aim to that point, and then scratch that out. All right, so that's where that brick goes. Now I'll come in here, get a base coat on that brick. This was not supposed to be a brick house, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. But you can also think about that when you're doing your house. Go like, maybe the reference is solid wood. Maybe you go like, maybe I'll have like the bottom portion of it be like brick. As an option, kind of looks nice. A little trim action, makes it look a little different. I'll get similar colors over here, blend those out. I'll save that for a brick show later. All right, so now I have those. It's feeling pretty good. Now what I'm going to do is take this, take a little brown even, and I'm going to do planks. I'm going to do some pretty large planks. I'll do like 1-inch planks. I'll mark off every inch, just because it won't take as long. You could do a 1/2 inch or whatever else. I think the original reference had a lot more planks in as that. Mark that off if it's going in perspective. And then, we already have that one. Come up here, the next one. And this is going to be like a guideline, so I'm not going to go too dark with the line. I have a black pencil so you can see it, but if this is my project, I'd probably go more like a brown. Go up to the next one, and make that little dot. Come all the way across. And for perspective, the 2-point perspective does make it a little more interesting. 1 point totally works as well. So far you can see these lines, how they're all going to the vanishing point. Now we'll come up a little bit higher. Bippity bop. And come up one more. Like I said, it's sort of a little bit wide for planks on a house, but they have different sizes, so not all of them are the same. Okay. Now I have the base coat. I have the wood grain on there, so now I'm going to take a smaller brush and get a sponge ready. This is a smaller bright brush. I'm going to make a shadow color that goes underneath this, and plus a highlight. So I'll show you the highlight first. All right, so I'll take the bright brush. I have my house base color. And right on top of the line, I'll take this, make that a little bit lighter, just a touch lighter, then I'll fade it out using kind of like watery paint. Much more watery paint. This is the bright brush. Yeah, so it's going to go from like darker to lighter because the planks are kind of overlapping a little bit. Come back over here, same thing. Nice clean line at first. Clean, kind of thin. And take your paintbrush, super lightly though, don't go too much, so it's kind of translucent, so it's not that thick. Got another little ridge. Next batch, skinny little line right there. And that was not watery enough, so your first layer, your first little line can be kind of thick paint. But then to get that blend, you're going to want to go back into it with a little more water. All right, let me get that side as well. A little more white. All right, there's my thick part. Then I'll rinse off the brush. It's just pretty much clean water. Scrub it a little bit, going back and forth. And gradually fade it as it goes up. And repeat. thicker line right there. Rinse off the brush, get the paint off, go back and forth a couple times, fade it slowly so it turns in almost invisible up here. And it's not like glaringly obvious, it's subtle, especially with the fade. You can fade it more or less, depends how dramatic you want your planks to be. By the way, a stucco house is a lot easier than wood, FYI. All right, here, another little tint, skinny line, and then fade. And that one's a little bit brighter, so I'll make this a little bit brighter as well. Kind of like the brighter contrast, kind of nice. And the top one up here, same process. I'll fade this. I'll finish this section on the right. I'll leave the left at a different stage so you can see different stages. All right, now fade again. Start off the line and then fade. So now it's starting to get those levels. All right, and the last one up here. Line here, need a little more white, a little more paint. All right, got my line. Now I'm gonna fade. You might be thinking, it's more work than I thought. All right, so now I'm done with that part. I'm gonna make a shadow color. So a shadow, this is yellow, added violet to it. I'm gonna add kind of a warm brown, like a burnt umber. And right underneath these trims, I'll come here with a small shadow, just like that. Then to make it blend, I'll take the sponge and only blend out the last half. I'll fade it out. I'll do the same thing up here. And if you don't like the color of the shadow, you can always go over it. I don't know if I like how warm the brown is. Might look better with like a raw umber instead of a burnt umber. But I'm committed now, so. All right, same thing there. A little shadow. And the sponge, I'm only blending out the lower half of that line. Like I'm not blurring out the top, the part that's right underneath the wood. I'm actually not blurring that out. Where'd my shadow go? All right, same thing over here. Little line. Magical line there. And fade. Then we'll do some more brown. Dot of black. Not a lot. All right, so some of them are going to be maybe a little more distinct than others. All right, I kind of like that look of that one. All right, so now we're getting all of those boards in there. So those are getting kind of done with all the wood grain, you got the shadows on there. Now the top section, I could do a little trim color. I'll do maybe another tint. Contrast-wise, a lighter tone might be nicer for this top part of the wood. It's like, what color trim would you want for your house? A nice blackish brown might be nice. You could go darker. That could be kind of cool. When you want a straight line, one of the tricks is that the further back you hold the brush, easier it is to have a straight line. Like it might be shaky at first. Once it hits the canvas, however, it smooths out. Yeah, you tend to want, if you want a straight line, a lot of people tend to choke up on the brush like they're holding a pencil. All right, so I got that trim. And to make it look like it's sticking out, I'm gonna have deeper shadows on that one. I'll rinse out my brush, get ready for the shadow, do a little burnt umber, maybe a little bit black. Ooh, that's a nice shadow. All right, so then I'll get my sponge ready. You should let your paint dry in between, really. That way if you don't like it, you just wash it off. All right, so now I got that deeper shadow. Then watch this. I blend it out. Once again, I'm only blending out the bottom half. So I'm leaving the top section untouched and only scrubbing and blending the bottom section. If you want it to look a little distressed, should do that so I can have like little draining things. Should do that so I can take a little water, a little burnt umber, like water damage kind of thing. It'll come down. Then take your sponge, drag it down so it'll look like stains coming down the wall. Might make it a little shabby looking, but that doesn't look. I just wanted to show you all the tricks you can do this stuff. And then drag it down again. Maybe it's because the gutters weren't cleaned, and so now they're dripping over them. Go back in and make that shadow a little bit darker. Okay. And that, my friends, is how you do a wooden house. And with the texture on there and what have you, but that's a good start.